We are reading from the Mandukya Upanishad. This is our WebEx class number 7 on this holy book. As we have already discussed, and it is always good to remind us, that this Upanishad has 3 main topics. The analysis of the 3 states of ours, the analysis of the letters of Om, A, U, and number 3 is identity of the individual, Jiva and Brahman. But these broad topics have been meticulously unrolled, almost spread out, dissected, investigated, and methodically reasoned out by none other than Gaudapada Acharya, who was the Guru's, Shankaracharya's Guru's Guru. And he has done this in 4 great chapters. We have already talked about that. We are now in the first topic, analysis of the 3 state of ours, waking, dreaming and deep sleep. As we have discussed, this Upanishad picks up experiences of ours which we cannot deny, and analyzes them and brings out the reality about those experiences, reality about the experiencer, and the reality about the objects that are being experienced. We are in the first pada, Prathama pada, or the first quarter of Atman, and that is the waking state here. We concentrate on the analysis of the first participant, the subject or the knower. The first participant, it is known by the general name, the Jiva. Its special name given in the Upanishads is Vishwa. The first participant, why do I say first participant? Because each state has got 3 participants. Without 3 participants, no state can function. In the waking state, the participants are the subject, the waker, and the instruments, our sense organs, with which we are able to experience this world, and the worldly objects. So the subject, the object, and the instrument by which the subject knows the object, experiences the object. So the subject is the first participant. In all the states, there are these 3 participants. They together are called Triputi. Triputi in Sanskrit means 3 participants. So the first participant here in the waking state, as we have said, is Jiva. Jiva means the individual living being. That is the general name, Jiva. Its special name given by the Upanishads, and especially this Upanishad, is Vishwa. Vishwa. Because participants are there in 3 states, and the subject in 3 states, they are there. Then how to differentiate between the subject of the waking state and the subject of the dream state and the subject of the deep sleep state? They have been given nice names. these names have got their meanings, why these names have been selected. But it is enough for us to remember that in the waking state the subject is called Vishwa. Vishwa means consciousness, but it is not the simple consciousness that we are talking about. This is a consciousness which is associated with the waking state. That is why the name is Vishwa. When it will be associated with the dream state, the name changes. So Vishwa means consciousness associated with waking state. Actually, that is the whole state. We have seen that each state has got a subject, object and the instrument to work with. What is this waker, this Vishwa? When the consciousness is associated with the mind, it forms a Chidabhasaha, that is typical technical term used by Vedanta. Chidabhasa is nothing but the Jiva or individual being or the Vishwa. But the word has its meaning. Chidabhasa means a likeness of consciousness. Chit means consciousness. Abhasa means likeness. It is not the real consciousness, but the likeness of consciousness. So, the material mind plus consciousness together is called Vishwa or Jiva or the living being or the individual being. And this likeness is called, or Chidabhasa is called the subject, the knower. Well, let us remember our example of the moon. We used the sentence, the bright moon is illuminating my face at night. The bright moon is illuminating my face at night. If the moon is not bright, then it cannot illuminate my face. And that too we are talking about night. So the bright moon is illuminating my face at night. This moon, suppose, is the subject in our sentence, in our waking state subject. Waking state subject is compared with this moon, and in this sentence, this moon, this bright moon, not just the planet moon, but the bright moon is the subject. And what is this subject? Apparently speaking, it is the moon. Surely it is the moon which is illuminating my face. But the sentence has an implied meaning, and that has to be read between the lines. And that is, the subject is not just the planet moon, but the bright moon. There is a brightness attached to the normally dark moon. So the bright moon means what? The moon plus sunlight which is reflecting on it. Moon does not have its own light. So the moon is illuminating my face is not a true statement. We have to say that the bright moon is illuminating my face. And what is this bright moon, this subject? The moon plus sunlight which is reflecting on it. Similarly, in the waking state, the subject is a combination of the mind and the consciousness of the self reflecting on it. That is called Chit Abhasa, conscious reflection of the consciousness, not the consciousness. Chit Abhasa. So mind is material thing, matter, and consciousness reflects on it, and that forms the subject. And this is technically called the Chidabhasa. So Chidabhasa means the likeness of the consciousness, not the consciousness itself. The second participants are the instruments. They are the sense organs and the physical body. With the help of our sense organs and our physical body, we experience the waking state, physical world or objects. So number one, the subject, that is called Chidabhasa or Jiva or Vishwa, and Vishwa is a combination of mind and consciousness. Second participant are the instruments, so the sense organs and the physical body. The sense organs are physical sense organs. And the third participant is the physical waking world. This is the object to be experienced by Vishwa. Vishwa means the individual Jiva or individual being. So the likeness of consciousness or Chidabhasa plus the sense organs plus the physical waking universe, all these together constitute the waking state. The Chidabhasa plus the sense organs plus the physical waking universe, all these together form our waking state. Vishwa is the consciousness that is associated with all these three components of the waking state. That is why it feels that togetherness, to be belonging to the waking state. When we are awake, we feel we are too much in the waking state and we belong to the state. Now, for your academic information, it is just for an academic information, I would like to discuss a relevant reference here. It will help us to clarify our confusions created by our internet study or a lone study without a teacher. The study of the Mandukya Upanishad or any other Vedantic book or technical books. So, here the Mandukya is doing a subtle job which we have to carefully notice. In other source books like Tattva Bodha and all, Vishwa or the waker is defined as the consciousness associated with the physical body only. That is just individual only. That's what we have said. The subject in the waking state is called Vishwa, and that is the Jiva, that is the individual being. Similarly, in those books, Taijasa means the subject in the dream state, and Prajna, the subject in the deep sleep state, are defined in the same manner. They are associated with, respectively, the subtle body and the causal body. So, in those books, Vishwa is shown as the individual waker. It includes only the subject and the instruments of cognition, that is the body. It did not include the waking gross universe. Universe is separate. An individual Jiva is separate from the totality of the universe, because the waking gross universe has got a different name in those books. They have their names, like in the waking state, the totality is called Virat. In the dream state, the totality is called Hiranyagarbha. And in the deep sleep state, the totality is called Ishvara. But here, in this book, they are put together in one name. Anyway, now we come back to our concept of these states. The equation from the definitions given by other books of Vedanta will stand like the following. In the waking state, the individual is called Vishwa and the collective is called Virat. In the subtle state or in the dream state, the individual is called Tejas and the collective is called Hiranyagarbha. In the causal state or in the deep sleep state, the individual is called Prajna and the collective called Ishvara. The Mandukya Upanishad does not differentiate between the individual and the universal, Vyashti and Samashti. These are the two words in Sanskrit. Vyashti means individual and Samashti means collective, universal. So in the waking state, Virat is actually included in the Vishwa itself. How? When you say Vishwa or the individual is the consciousness associated with the waking state, then what you actually mean is that the waking state includes individual gross body, the totality of all individual gross bodies, and the whole gross universe. Now there is a benefit doing that. You reduce many logical fallacies. It reduces the length and rigors of analysis and says that the same consciousness is associated with the individual gross body and also the gross universe. All put together, the consciousness is called Vishwa. In short, the Mandukya Upanishad confirms the identity between the individual and the universal by using only one word. You don't need to differentiate. Aham Brahma Asmi. I am Brahman. That has to be realized. That is the goal of non-dual Vedanta. Therefore, to reduce the time it takes for us to understand, to reduce the length of our analysis, to reduce the rigors of our analysis, Mandukya Upanishad just uses one word for two. Or it is one step ahead in proving non-duality. That is also true. This is logical because Virat can be there only when there is Vishwa. The universal can be there only when there is the individual and universal. When individual can be there and universal can be there. But if I talk about the individual, then the individual is included in the universal. And therefore, the universal can be there only when there is the individual. Because it is a totality of all individuals. When I am the consciousness in the waking state, then alone there is a waking universe and the concept of collective consciousness or Virat is validated. If I am not there, what for this working universe? For whom? For whose experience? Therefore, it is very logical that Mandukya has reduced the scope of our analysis. Another supportive point is, suppose I go into the dream state and identify myself with the dream universe. How can there be a separate consciousness that is associated with waking state universe? I am gone into sleep, into dream state. Then I have to leave this consciousness and go there. But then I have to create two consciousnesses. This is a very subtle logic. So how can there be a Virat or the collective waking universe? Therefore, the individual and universal in the waking state are inseparable. By the same token, the same calculation can be made in the dream state and in the deep sleep state. The gist is that the Prathamapada or the first quarter or the first type of design of my dress, that includes both individual and universal. Now a question, academic question can be asked, why should the Mandukya make it complicated mixing up Vishwa and Virat? Because many books say that they are different. The very logical answer is, if Vishwa does not include Virat, if individual does not include the collective, then the individual will become many. And if Vishwa includes only the individual gross body, I the waker and you the wakers will have to be accepted as truly different. But we are not. We are not different. That is non-dualism. We will be many different consciousnesses which will lead us to duality or rather multiplicity. This is called Bahutva Doshaha. This type of concept that there are many individuals, therefore many individual consciousnesses will lead us not to non-dual experience but to varieties of experiences about the free souls. And that is the position of the Sankhya philosophy. Sankhya means number. Numbers, many trillions, zillions of souls who are free. And also each such separate consciousness will have different definitions. Why they are different? So therefore we will have so many such consciousnesses, and therefore we cannot define what consciousness or Atman is. We cannot, because same definition will not be applicable to you, to me. But if Vishwa includes Virat, the individual includes collective, how many individuals will be there? There will be only one. There will be only one. In the beginning itself we have resolved this problem of multiplicity. Now I am skipping other academic reasons that have been used to support this point. Now we go back to our Prathamapada, and we know that the individual includes the universe. The consciousness is identified with the individual equipment and the total creation. We are now taking up the words in the third mantra separately and analyzing them. The first word is Jagarita Sthanam. Jagarita Sthanaha. Jagarita Sthanaha means waking state as the sphere of experience or action. The consciousness has the field of action in the waking state. This has the similarity with Sri Krishna's discussion in the Gita in the 13th chapter on Kshetra and Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga. There Sri Krishna discusses the individual knower and the individual field of experience. And similarly, the universal knower and the universal field of functioning. The field of functioning and the knower of the field. The waking state is the waking field. And Vishwa or the waker is the knower of the field. The waking state is the waking field and Vishwa, the waker, is the knower of the field. This we have to keep in mind. The consciousness associated with the field in the waking state is called the Prathama Pada. What is Prathama Pada, or the first quarter of what? The first quarter of Atman or consciousness. And what is this consciousness? I am that consciousness. So, the first quarter is the first state of me. I am in the waking state. Therefore, all these things are being told to me to analyze my own experience. This is my waking state. This I have to remember. Every analysis, when Gaudapada Acharya or Shankaracharya, they spread out the whole sheet and then dissect each and every part. What do they do actually? They let us know what way we mix up things, even though things are not mixed up at all. Because of our confusion, because of a kind of mistake that we do, we mix up things. So that is the Jagarita Sthanaha, means the waking state. Now let us take the other words in the mantra denoting the individual. Bahishprajna, the word is used, the one whose consciousness is turned outwards or relates to things external. In the waking state, our consciousness is turned outwards, or our consciousness is busy transacting with external things. That means, in the waking state, we are not, our consciousness is not turned inward. And that happens in our dream. When our consciousness is not outside, it is inside me, inside my body. So, the waking state means that our consciousness is turned outwards. So, we have used two words now, internal and external, outwards and inwards. When I say consciousness is turned outside, that means I say this in respect of the physical body. The physical body has got both external and internal. Consciousness is all pervading. Therefore, it has no outside, no inside. I am all pervading, because it is the same I who will experience dream. Therefore, I don't have any outside or I don't have any inside. It is in relation to the body, with reference to the body, that we use the words inside, outside, inward, outward. When I talk of dream, the brain or the mind is within my physical body, and therefore dream happens in brain or in mind, that is inside. Then the consciousness is turned inward. Whereas in the waking state, we can have both external and internal references of the physical body. Because I experience things outside my body. When we say consciousness is turned outwards, we do not actually mean that there are things outside the consciousness. The world is not outside the consciousness. It is outside the body, but not outside the consciousness, because the consciousness pervades everything and still can include everything. The world cannot exhaust the infinite consciousness. It occupies an infinitesimal part of that infinite reality. Infinitesimal part of that infinite reality. So consciousness does not have any inside or outside. It is the body, the waking body, that has inside and outside. Let us go back to our hymn that we learned in the beginning of our earlier talk. Shankara said, how can I go around him when he is all pervading and without end? How can I offer him a farewell when he is spread inside and outside of everywhere? So the Bhaisprajna means experiencing things outside, means the waker whose consciousness is outside in relation to the physical body. We experience things outside the physical body. That means whose consciousness is directed to things outside. From the point of view of the collective, there is no outside inside, because we are talking about this universe. For the universe, there is no outside and inside for experience. What we experience, we have to experience here. Then this other word comes, that ekonavingsati mukhaha. And this body has got 19 gateways, 19 counters to have experiences through. When we said that Vishwa or the individual is having outside inside, then our consciousness is turned outside, then through what the consciousness will experience the outside world? Because consciousness can perceive things outside only through special doors or gateways. It is like when you place a lamp in a pot which has some holes. Then the light of the lamp inside can go out of the pot and illuminate objects outside. Similarly, the consciousness goes out, as it were, of course, through the sense organs like the eyes, etc., and then glows like glowworm. Things become visible, illuminated. It pulsates, pandate, pulsate. It cognizes the objects. It is a two-way cognition between the internal subject and the external objects. And there are all 19 gateways. We know that they are called our sense organs and our pranas and 4 parts of our mind. So Jnanendriyas, Karmendriyas, Pranas, they are 15 and 4 parts of our mind. Manas, Buddhi, Chitta, Ahankara. The thinking mind, the deciding mind, the mind which retains in memory, and the I consciousness. Of course, prana does not help us directly to turn our attention outward, but the prana gives the ability to the senses. Prana means the vital force. So these are all technical discussions that we are talking about the doors. Through these doors, the consciousness works because the data is collected from outside, or the data reflects from outside, and the consciousness recognizes them. Suppose I am speaking to you with the help of my mouth. That is the door. Speaking requires energy. The prana vital force is converting food into energy and helping me to speak. If you go on fasting several days, then you will lose your energy to speak. So when I am speaking and you are able to recognize my voice, and I am now extrovert. So this way, through the doors, the consciousness experiences the outside gross objects. Therefore, the consciousness is the experiencer of gross objects. When the consciousness is associated with the gross body, the world experienced is also gross. When we compare the Prathama Pada with the Ditya Pada, or the first quarter with the second quarter, then we will get a clear picture of the first and second ones. Gaudapada presents such comparisons. Studied alone, each pada will seem dull and an academic study. One is called Bahisprajna, another is called Antaprajna. Bahisprajna means one is turned outside, consciousness turned outside, another consciousness turned inward. That means one experiences grosser objects, another experiences subtle mental objects. So they are called Sthula Bhuk. Sthula Bhuk, the waker experiences the gross object. This is about the experiences in the waking state. Now let us again remember what is the meaning of this first quarter or Prathama Pada. We said that Prathama Pada means the consciousness associated with the waking state, gross body or gross sense organs, and gross universe in both individual and collective forms of the waker. This is called the first quarter. The consciousness is there, the gross body is there, that is the waking state, and the gross universe is there. In both their individual and collective form together is called the waking state. When we talk about individual and universe, what do we actually mean? The consciousness does not have any division, it is infinite. Whether we call it individual or universal or collective, it is the same consciousness. That is what is the meaning of the word infinite. So this is the waking state world, waking state. A somewhat close empirical example of consciousness is the space or akasha. It is difficult to just comprehend what we mean by this consciousness which is infinite, because we have not seen it. Our waking state, gross sense organs have not been able to perceive it and will not be able to. This we have to understand. So we will try to find some kind of analogy to show some similarity, even though they are not similar at all in many respects and in all respects. The space, at least to us, is one, all-pervading, attributeless and infinite. But when we say this cooking pot is a 5-liter cooking pot, we may mean that the space inside the pot can hold 5-liter liquid. What do we mean by that? We actually imply space inside and space outside. And the cooking pot also is nothing but space. Well, space inside and space outside. This is a statement to refer to the pot and its size, not the space and its size. When we say that this cooking pot can hold 5-liter liquid, we mean there is so much space that it can hold 5-liter liquid. There is so much space inside the pot, then there is space outside the pot. So we make a division in the space. But actually what do we do? We are not talking about the space. We are talking about the size of the pot. But when we are saying that this is a pot, we do not exclude the idea of space both inside and outside. If there is no outside space but only inside space of the cooking pot, you cannot move it anywhere. We just take for granted that there is space inside and there is space outside. Space can never be broken like outside and inside. You cannot refer only to a 5-liter space inside the spot, because inside implies the existence of an outside also. You include the whole space. This is how the consciousness turned outward, turned inward, these words have to be understood. As the inside and outside of the space always go together. Similarly, there is no outside or inside of Atman, because they always go together. If they go together, outside, inside, what is outside and what is inside? And the truth is, whether you include both outside and inside space has no effect on the indivisible space itself. Whether I divide it or not, it does not have any effect on the space. It remains one and indivisible. This is called subjective truth. It does not depend on anybody's confirmation. The truth of the subject, the truth is truth. Whether you call it a truth or not, that does not matter. Therefore, the one and indivisible space is referred to by One name the pot, another name the bowl, another name the bucket, or call it Vishwa in reference to human beings, living beings, or every created beings and things in this creation. Every individual is such a name. But the attributes are many and of various names and forms. And that's what we have learned from the example of the ornaments and gold. This Upanishad wants us not to differentiate the individual from the universe. That is why it is taking so much trouble to explain that this outside and inside that happens in respect of the name and form called the gross body. Now let me revert to an idea that I just mentioned. That the truth is that it has no consequence for the indivisible space itself whether you include both outside and inside. Whether you include both outside and inside space. It remains one and indivisible. Whether we divide it or not, we cannot divide it. This is called subjective truth. We have to keep it in mind. Consciousness is the truth. It does not depend on our confirmation or negation. If it is like that, if truth is like that, then why do we need the Upanishads to take so much trouble to talk about the individual's liberation, the individual states, and the gross, subtle and causal bodies? See, we have entrapped ourselves with our own logic. Now the opponent is offering a query. If you cannot divide like that, then why do the Upanishads, or why does this Upanishad take such big trouble to talk about an individual's liberation, talk about an individual's waking state, dream state and deep sleep state, and also talk about the gross body and subtle body and the causal body of the universe, of the individual? Well, the answer is very, very sweet. Very sweet answer. The answer is the Upanishads are making an issue out of no issues. See, what a fun. The Upanishads are making an issue out of no issues. And the no issue is what? The no issue is the truth is subjective. The no issue is the truth is subjective. But we, the individuals, the jivas, when we want to search for a meaning in this life, we want to know this subjective truth objectively as an object. We want to know it. In what sense? That it should be proved in our laboratories. In our chemistry laboratories, physics laboratories, biology laboratories. So the Upanishads are making an issue out of no issue. Why? Because the truth is subjective, but it is we who want to search for a meaning in this life, and therefore we want to know this truth objectively. Is it not the case? Because we are too much in the waking state. and too much conditioned by the divisions of the waking state. There should be an object, there should be a subject, that is me, and there should be instruments of knowing it in the laboratories. So we want to make an issue out of no issues. And there is a conflict when we want to change the definitions of the subject into that of an object. Infinity is infinity. When we want to place the infinity in front of us and know it, then the subject becomes the object. Then who is the subject? We want to change the definitions of the subject into that of an object. It is utterly illogical. It is impractical, because all calculations will fail, and absurd. All mathematical calculations failed when we thought that the sun is moving round the earth. But when we placed the sun as at the center of the universe, then all the stars and all the calculations fell into place. We were able to calculate things properly. But we thought the earth is the center of this universe and the sun, moon and everything was going round this world. What was a tragedy? No calculation would help. But when the sun is placed at the center of the universe, then we could calculate time, distance, everything, how long it will take to reach the moon, for the rocket to reach the moon, etc., etc. So, this is because of our fault that the Upanishad is trying to make an issue out of no issues. That is the truth. But the issue is not created by the Upanishads, because it is analyzing our own experiences. The scriptures are like millions of mothers, Shankaracharya says. Suppose a mother is asking the child whom she wants to wake up. The mother is calling out, "Honey, get up, honey, get up." And the child answered, "No, I cannot, I am sleeping." And the mom says, "No, you are not sleeping because you are speaking." Then the child is, suppose is saying, "No, mom, why don't you accept that I am sleeping when I myself am confirming?" Doesn't it sound familiar? Why don't you accept when I myself am confirming? And poor mother, poor scriptures, what can they do? They go on arguing with the sleeping child and doing all sorts of tricks to awake the child until it awakes to the awakened state. This is what this Mandukya Upanishad is doing. It is analyzing our experiences and telling us that how we are wrong. How we are wrong. This is something very, very serious. It is exactly like that. We have experienced this. Children, when you put them to sleep and they just show that they are sleeping. If you look at their eyes, you will see the eyeballs inside the cover moving. They are not sleeping. But if you ask them, "Have you slept?" they will answer, "Yes, I am asleep." But our logic, we are grown up children. Swami Vivekananda calls us mustached babies. A child is arguing, Mom, why don't you accept when I myself am confirming that I am sleeping? The fellow who can speak so many words is already awake. But then the logic is that I am confirming. Thus, this is the childish idea in us. But never mind. These scriptures, they will go on disturbing us until we wake up. Until we wake up to our awakened state. So, how many states do we get? We have not yet covered the whole of the waking state. But we have got another state here through the waking state. That is called awakened state. But that is not at all a state that will be told at the end. So we will have to wait till then. But for today, we will stop our discussion here. We have to go a little more distance to find the end of this first prathama quarter, or the first type of design of my dress, which is called the waking state. And the Upanishad is laboring so hard to convince us of our fallacies or irrational thoughts about this waking state, because we think that this is the real state. We think that. So, we'll stop here today, and thank you very much.